Just to be specific about Anas al-Sharif, what is indisputable is that he clearly had a relationship with Hamas stretching back a number of years. I presume you've done your own investigating into this. It wasn't the first time he'd been accused of this. He was accused of this while he was still alive last year. So what is your understanding of what his relationship was to Hamas in terms of employment or support or otherwise?
Piers, you have several photos hugging Cristiano Ronaldo. It doesn't make you a Manchester United fan. President Donald Trump has a number of photos with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not sure if he is a human trafficker or a child molester. The fact that somebody has pictures, in fact, Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, has met Khalid Mish'al, the head of the Hamas, 4 times during the period that the period that Anas al-Sharif met Hamas leaders. The fact that journalists take pictures with people means nothing whatsoever. There is no evidence whatsoever that has been independently verified by any credible organization that gives that whatsoever. But you know what? Let me entertain this ridiculous assumption that some people are making to try and smear and try and defend the indefensible for a serial killing entity that has killed, like I say, more than 270 journalists in the past less than 24 months. If there was somebody who worked for the media, for argument's sake, for the media entity of a governing body or a political party in any, let's say in Ukraine, and the next day the Russians decided to send an armed drone without presenting any of that evidence, without trying to arrest them, without trying to accuse them of anything whatsoever, and murdered them in a civilian area in front of a hospital which they, by the way, destroyed and demolished and burnt out and claimed was a Hamas cell, and it evidently wasn't, which is Al-Shifa Hospital. And we can go into the litany of lies about that they used to justify bombing and destroying hospitals and universities and schools. Is that justifiable? The fact that we're even having this conversation is bizarre to me when we are watching live streaming of a genocide that these journalists have been risking their lives in this ridiculous hope that the world will wake up one day, and see that our collective humanity is being massacred by an unhinged group of people who, because of their impunity and because we've drunk the Kool-Aid for the past 70, 80 years, and because mainstream media in the West has gone along with it, they can get away with anything. So the fact that this discussion even is taking place is bizarre. Anas al-Sharif is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who risked his life in the face of the most barbaric military ever to be seen in modern history over the past 22 months. What we should be discussing and what people should be looking at is how on earth we have allowed for ourselves to normalize a discussion around the targeted assassination of a 28-year-old father of 2 who all he did was stand in front of a camera and tell people what was going on. The basis and the premise of journalism is to speak truth to power, is to report that which those in power do not want reporting. Right now, those in power have made us believe that the premise of reporting is to take for granted what they said in some sort of consciously racist way because his name is Anas al-Sharif and not John Smith, that there is some sort of possible plausible justification for murdering him in cold blood in the evening in a flimsy hospital tent outside a burnt out hospital. And that is what the public of the world knows now, even though the media is still slow to catch up, that this is a disgraceful lie that nobody is willing to stand for ever again.
If what the IDF has said is not true, then this has been a despicable slaughter of journalists, and that is a war crime. And I do think that Jamal is completely right to keep pointing out that over 200 Palestinian journalists have been killed in this war so far. They're the only journalists allowed to operate in Gaza, which in itself is disgraceful and a stain on this Israeli government. I've been on at Netanyahu about this for many months, that he's got to let journalists in to do their job. And if the only ones that can do it keep being killed, it is one of the most perilous places now in modern history for journalists to operate. And as a journalist, you ask me how I feel as a journalist, I feel that that is a disgraceful set of circumstances.